Okay, here we are again. One of the things I've been doing lately is trying to get the back focus set up properly on my Celestron 925 with and without the focal reducer and with and without the off-axis guider. And for anything like me, you've now got a collection of little black rings of various lengths of various threads, and you need to work out how you can configure those together to get the right order of components and the right back focus for the scope or the focal reducer. So I've made up a spreadsheet which I think might be useful, and I'd like some feedback on it, please. Okay, so the first thing that this is all based on is a components list. So in here we have all the components that I've got, each one uniquely named: shims, extenders, gender changer adapters, cameras, my 925, etc, etc. For each part we've got a count, so I've got 2.2mm M42 shims, 2 ASI 120mm minis, but for most components I've only got a single one. For things like the Celestron 925 and the focal reducer, they actually have a back focus requirement, so that's in here. We've then got the minimum optical length, and for most components they've only got a single length. So we've got 16.5mm M48 female to M42 male adapter there. But there are some components that have variable optical length. So for here, for instance, we've got my BARDA 29 to 46 M42 Verilok. So in here we've got 29 as the minimum optical length and 46 as the maximum. And the only other one that's in here is my non-rotating helical focuser, which has got a minimum optical length of 0 and a maximum of 3.7. Then each component will have a thread size and a thread gender. So we've got M42s, M48s, 1.25s. They all end in Fs or Ms for female or male. And many components will also have another end that's got a thread and a component on it. So here, for instance, where are we? On this 20mm M42 extender, it's an M42 female thread at one end and an M42 male thread at the other end. For things like cameras, they've only got a single end, so we actually use the fact that they've only got a single end as a way of determining that they can be at one end or other of the optical path. So in order to build an optical path for a particular configuration, we use this screen, the back focus aid planner. So we give the setup a name. So we're going to do something simple first, which is just going to be the Celestron C925, no off-axis guider, no focal reducer. We then unfortunately you won't be able to see the drop downs that come up here, but I'll show you those in a short while. It's just my rubbishy screen recording software, unfortunately. So what scope lens we're going to use, and it's showing me that I've got an ASI 120 mini, a 294 MC Pro, the Celestron C925 and the Celestron focal reducer. So we're going to use the Celestron 925. Now in order to ensure that it can easily calculate the remaining optical length that we need to attain, if we tell it what connector we'll actually put on the telescope at one end and what camera there is at the other end, then it will then know what length of optical path it needs to make up, or we need to make up with its assistance, in order to get the correct back focus length. So in this case it's showing me I've got a 50mm T adapter which has got an SCT thread on one end. We've got the focal reducer, which could go on the back of the 925, and we've also got an SCT to M48 adapter. So I'm going to use the 50mm T adapter. Okay, what camera we're going to use, and it's showing us the 120mm, the 294 Pro. I'm going to pick the 294 Pro, and now we've got a tolerance setting here, and we can say how close to that the optimal back focus we're prepared to go. So in this case I'm going to say within 3mm. Okay, so when I've picked the scope and the adapter and the camera, it's actually found out what thread there is on each of those elements. So for the for the 925, it's got an SCT thread. That's the only thing that will connect to the 925, and it's a male. It's picked out its optimal back focus of 139.1, and then it knows that the M42, the 50mm T adapter, when it's connected to the 925, will then present an M42 male thread, and its optical length is 50mm. The camera also presents an M42 male thread, and its its optical length is 6.5mm, and that's the distance from the front face of the camera back to the sensor. So given that we've got the 925, the 50mm T adapter and the camera, it's worked out that to attain 139.1mm of back focus, we actually need to make up another 82.6mm of back focus. So down here, the camera's already been pulled down into the list, and it points out that we actually need to change the gender in order to connect everything together, because we've got the 50mm T adapter is representing a male, and the ASI 294 is also presenting a male. So if we want to connect those two together, we've got to have a gender change somewhere in the middle. Okay, so the first component I'm going to add here is I just want to get a bit of length up first. So it's now showing us, and again you can't see this, but it's showing me all the components I have that have an M42 female connector on one end, and I'm going to pick a 30mm M42 extender. So that's added an extra 30mm of length, giving us a total optical length in the camera and the extender of 36.5mm. So we've still got to attain another 52.6mm of back focus. Now let's address this gender change issue. So I've got an 11mm M42 female adapter. So that also had an M42 female on one end, and it now presents an M42 on the other end, adds us an extra 11mm, and we now need to attain between 41.6mm of back focus to get the optimal back focus. Now I know that in my components the only thing that will really do that is my Barda Varilock, which is a variable focal length. So there it is there. It connects nicely to the 11mm female to female adapter, and it gives us an optical length of between 29 and 46mm. So if we now look up here, we've got a distance to go of between 12.6 and minus 4.4mm. Now because minus 4.4 and 12.6 are outside our tolerance range that we set, it's not quite clever enough yet to know that because it's variable it could actually attain correct back focus here, so I'll have to fix that. But if for instance I was to change the tolerance to 5mm, then the max to go goes to the red comes off it. So with this configuration we can get our optimal back focus, and we can use these numbers here to calculate what to set the Barda Varilock configuration to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this configuration so I can refer to it later. So C925, no OAG, no FR, ASI 294. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build a configuration up that uses the Celestron 925 and the off-axis guider. So we'll go back to the back focus aid here. We'll change the title. Okay, so we're going to use the 50mm T adapter again. We're going to use the 294 Pro, and we need to delete all of the components that we had for our previous configuration. Okay, and running down here you can see it says running background query. So what it's doing now is it's gone and because we've removed components or changed components in the list, it's gone and updated the database queries that say what parts are available, because all the things that we had on here were previously not available because we'd used them, but now they are available. And if we go across to the choose a lookups tab, this is the thing that populates the drop downs, which you unfortunately can't see. So you can see here, these are all of the components that could fit on the back of, on the front of the ASI 294MC Pro, because they're that's presenting an M42 male thread, and all of these items here have all got M42 female threads. So if we go to the back focus aid, and the first thing I want to do is I want to put an extender on, because I'm going to fit my off-axis guider and I know I need it. So I'm going to fit 21mm M42 extender, and it's refreshing the database queries again, does a choose a lookup, right? So if we now go back to the back focus aid, we can then say, right, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to change the gender, because we need to, right, and I need the M42, M48 ring because my rotator and off-axis guider are M48 threads. So I'm then going to choose my rotator, and I'm going to choose my off-axis guider, right, and it's updating the queries, and here we've now got the different parts that are available on each of the drop downs. After the off-axis guider, we're going to do a 10mm M48 extender. Now, the fact that it's only presenting me with a short list of things now is due to the fact that we've used some of the M48 components already, but the fact that we've actually only got a back focus requirement of 41.1, there's no point in us, say, picking a 50mm extender tube, because that's going to be outside the tolerance of the back focus that we're trying to attain. So the things in the chooser lookups are populated not only on the basis of the thread type presented by the previous component and the gender of the previous component, but also by the remaining optical length to be attained plus the tolerance. So the next thing we want to do is, after the guider, we're going to go for a 10mm extender, and we're now going to flip back to M42. So now the thread change requirement is gone. We then pick from, what else do we need to do? We need to change the gender, so we'll go and choose our female to female adapter, right? So we've now got a focal length requirement, an optical length requirement of 3.6 remaining. These boxes have gone amber because we're now within our tolerance limit of 5mm. So what can we do to get that extra 3.6 to get perfect? Well, I've got a 3mm M42 extender, and we only need 0.6 now. I've got a 0.5mm shim, and for shims, just flipping back to a component list, the shim, which is a bit like a washer, it has a size M42, so therefore on the components list it's shown as an M42 female at one end and an M42 male at the other, because it has no impact on the optical train. So but that's the way you denote the fact that it's a shim. So I go to the back focus aid again, so we're within 0.1mm, and I've got 0.1mm shims, so I'll have one of those, and we've got our back focus now at 139.1. And the minimum to go, max to go have all gone green, so this is now a perfect configuration. So let's go and save it. Save C925. That's it, saved. Right, so we can copy these across to OneNote or print them out on a bit of paper and stick them in our camera bag, whatever we want to do in order to save these configurations, so we can build them when we're preparing for or in the middle of an astrophotography session. Okay, so if we flip back to the back focus aid, one of the things that we can do is, as it says up here, we should only fill in cells that are this colour, so that's these cells and these cells. We've got various tabs down here. These are all populated by database queries that are derived from the components list, where we put our initial set of devices and components. And One other thing is, because this spreadsheet utilizes Microsoft Power Query, which is available, I think, from Excel 2010. It's available on Office 365, which is what I'm running. But I think for 2010, 13 and 16, you would need to download something from Microsoft's website to get Power Query. So Power Query itself doesn't require any macros. You can just have XLSX files. However, if you, I've got this spreadsheet set up so that when I change any component in this list, or I change any component in the components list, then the database queries that are happening on these tabs here are automatically triggered. So that requires, because that's done by macros, that requires this to be saved as an XLSM spreadsheet, and people don't tend to like loading up macro spreadsheets from some stranger on the internet. So therefore, what I've got down here is I've got a text tab that just has the VBA code for the macros that you can look at yourself, and if you're happy with it and you know how, you can then go and switch the spreadsheet into an XLSM, add the back focus aid function or sub onto the VBA tab for the back focus aid sheet, and all that does is whenever the worksheet is changed, then it checks to see whether the change is within the range plan parts. If it isn't, then it doesn't do anything. Otherwise, it disables events, refreshes all of the database queries, and then re-enables events. And then it does the same on the components list tab, and then the save configuration, which has a button on the back focus aid here. That button there calls this macro here, which asks for the name for the tab to save the configuration to, checks to see if the tab already exists, and if it does, gives you the option to overwrite it, and it then goes and copies the configuration to the new tab and tells you that it's done it. So if you want to use, if you want to download this as an XLSX, because I'm not going to upload it as an XLSM, but if you want to use it, then you need to follow the instructions on the macro text tab, and that will tell you how to actually convert this to something more useful. If you don't want to do the updates using macros, then whenever you change things in this list or things in this list, then you just need to go to the data tab and poke the refresh all button, and that will update all of the database queries. Okay, I think that's it for now. Please let me know what you think of my tool, and I'll be happy to take any suggestions or comments. Thank you very much.